And that way, if anything else interesting is talked about, like Princess just brought up the idea of how do we connect the shit in the socials and make it applicable to what we're actually doing. And I was saying that's a next week course. And so we'll make sure that marketing structure is well outlined and detailed for next week. And then this week we're just going to talk about literally some of my all-time must-read favorite books, the podcast that I just mentioned, and a couple other resources that I've created in the past that I think will help aid and abet you. So let's I don't have a PowerPoint, I don't have a deck, I don't have anything built for today. I will take the notes that I use for this discussion and I'll post those in the group along with the video so people will be able to see it. If I get real spunky, I'll actually put links to the books and links to the podcast in this list. I can see myself taking the extra 68 seconds, it's longer than that, but the extra, 20 minutes to put that together in a fashion that's usable, because I think there's some real value in that. And so I want to have a conversation because as I was explaining to my daughter last night, our diet is a lot more than the food and drink we stuff into our face, right? Our diet is what we're reading, what we're watching, what we're listening to, right? What we're feeding our mental space as well as our physical space. And I feel like we need to be more mindful of that. There's too much trash TV. There's too many trashy novels. There's too many trashy podcasts and shows and music and things that are occupying our time, our energy, our space, that if we just leveled that up a notch or two, right, we'd be able to reduce some of the negativity in our life while increasing the positivity in our life, right? And so it's not enough just to reduce the negativity. We have to replace it. Jeff made the point a few sessions ago about what do we do when we get a bad habit that we know is bad for us that we want to stop. And Jeff used the example of, I used to go to the cigar shop on Wednesday evening, and now I go to the gym, right? So that's not only like eliminating some bad stuff we're doing, that's replacing it with really good stuff. And that's a great way to spend time. I remember when COVID first hit and everybody and their brother was talking about Tiger King. And I'm like, what in the heck? Why would stop? Right? You know that's garbage. You just fill in your mind with it. And I feel the same way about 24/7 news, right? Like you can watch the local news for a half hour a day and you can catch anything that's relevant in the world and relevant to your own locale. But if you're watching 24/7 news channels, there's still only 27 minutes worth of news, man. And then there's 23 and a half hours of conjecture and opinion on that news. So you don't I'm a big fan of think for ourselves, right? I don't really need someone else to tell me how to think. I'm good at that. Thank you. I figured that one out already. So I think it's important to pay attention to what we feed ourselves. That was a long dissertation. You took it all better than my daughter did. She's cool. So I'm gonna share some of the books that I think are important. And again, I'm open to discussion. I'm curious which ones you've read, because I have a sneaking suspicion that some of them that are on my list have been on your list too. So the first book that I recommend to everybody, and I've said since I first read it 20 plus years ago, if this was required 5th grade reading, the world would be a much better place. Jeff, you're nodding. You know what book I'm gonna say?
I got a few guesses. Yeah.
All right. So the book is written by a guy named Don Miguel Ruiz, and Don Miguel is the author of The 4 Agreements. and he's written a handful of books, and one of my favorites was actually co-authored by a student of his called Beyond Fear. But the Four Agreements is so simple, so straight to the point, and so important. And the Four Agreements, real succinctly, are be impeccable with your word. And what's important about that is the idea that what we say is what's going to happen, right? We speak our future. I've got friends that say all the time, you won't see it in your reality until you see it in your mind first, right? And what we speak is what happens. And what we write, what we think about, what we put out there. And I remember reading somewhere that someone said that's why it's called spelling, right? Because we're actually casting spells with our words, and the incantations are incredible. And so be impeccable with your word isn't just about what you say to others, but it's what we say to ourselves, right? And so the negative self-talk that we have, the self-doubt that we have, and what we reinforce by that self-talk is so powerful, and we have to be really mindful of that. I've said for years that I need like a mental scalpel so I can go carve some of that head trash out and get rid of it, right? I think we probably talked about that in session 1. So that's lesson 1 in the Four Agreements, or agreement 1. Number 2 is don't take things personally. So often we're in a situation where somebody does us wrong and we think that had anything to do with us. And if we had the ability to zoom out and see through time and space, we'd see that maybe they had something really shitty happen to them 10 minutes before, and they're reacting to that, and they're carrying their stuff into our world, and now we're personalizing it. In all sincerity, and I mean this as sincerely as possible, we all got enough garbage in our own lives to deal with. We don't need to be carrying somebody else's mess with us. I'm a big fan of, if you got a problem, bring it to me. I'm gonna take that problem from you so you're not carrying it around, but I'm not attached to the problem, so I'm gonna set it down, right? It ain't my problem, it's yours. But now it's less of a burden on you, and I took it from you, but I put it somewhere, right? And I'm also a fan of, with my own issues, my own challenges, I can take those, squish them into a little ball, and compartmentalize them somewhere in my brain, so I'm not carrying that crap into every single interaction, right? I can go and visit that mess whenever I need to, right? But I don't need to be lugging it around, because that stuff's heavy, right? We need to be operating at our highest and best self. So that's an important lesson. The next one, the third one, is do not make assumptions. And I get 2 and 3 mixed up. 2 might be do not make assumptions, and 3 might be don't take things personally, but whatever. And it's amazing to me. It's 2022, and this still an issue for people, right? We assume too much and we ignore too much. And I was talking with a couple of friends yesterday about the construct of racism and how that's still a thing. And they're not accepting African Americans or Muslims outside of Afghanistan right now, and the people that are trying to leave. And it's like, what? Really? Still? Give me a break. Why is this even a thing? And it frustrates me to no end, because like, judging a person by the color of their skin is as ridiculous as saying, hey, I'm at McDonald's and that food looks really good in the picture. It's like, no chance.
I swear, I was so irritated yesterday because we have such this amazing outcry for Ukraine and everything that's going on. And I've seen this video now, maybe about 5 times, of Ukrainian police pulling these African, I don't know what nation they're from, so I'm just using the term African, but pulling these African children off the train. Like, they were boarded on their way to safety, pulling them off the train and and I just thought to myself for a second, I was like, man, once again, like, here I am being completely empathetic, ready to send money wherever or do whatever. And I was like, I can't, I personally, I can't ever, that's something I stopped doing years ago. I can't have an ounce of my time, talent, energy go towards something where people are divided against people that look like me. Or people that look like my children. And it just broke my heart. And I said, and I laughed, it's one of those, you laugh, it hurts. So you just laugh about it. And I just said, man, these people are in the most desperate moment of their lifetime, but they yet in that desperation still find time to be racist. Like, I just couldn't believe it. Like, and I was like, man, racism really does trump all ills. It really does. Racism trumps all other ills, because people will be, and they know how desperate it is. Everybody's trying to get out. I get it. But to invoke class, race, whatever ism of the day in a situation like that, when we could just squeeze in, I'd rather stand on somebody's shoulders, you know what I'm saying, than get off that train. Or I'd rather hold somebody, hold the child, put them on your back, you know what I'm saying, do whatever you got to do. But like, I don't care if we got to pack in like sardines, like, get us out of here, but anyway, that just bothered me to like no end the other day.
I can't even imagine. I can empathize, but I can't, like, how that would feel watching it as a person of color, looking at that atrocity still, right? It's like, we've got this most atrocious thing happening and y'all figured out how to double down and make it worse. I don't like, come on. And, I used to think the word ignorance meant dumb or stupid, right? And that's not what the word means. It's like literally to ignore something that's happening in front of you, right? It's a little bit different. Like, there's an intentionality behind ignorance that doesn't exist when you don't know. It's that you know, but you don't care.
Yep.
And it's frustrating to me. So yeah, that video would send shivers down my spine. Your definition of it made me tear up. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, don't make assumptions is number 3. Number 4 is always do your best. And the real important lesson in that section is the construct that your best is going to change from day to day or minute to minute. Right? You might be sick as a dog and still have to do some stuff. And your best in that moment isn't going to be the same level when your best is at your height, right? But do the best you can, right? And so I really appreciated the lesson there. And that's one that and be impeccable with your word are the two that I end up working on most. Not because of the integrity aspect of impeccable with your word. I'm pretty good with that, but the self-talk piece and the always doing your best, because I'll let time go by and I'm like, dang it, man, there were a handful of things that I thought I was going to do and I didn't do them, or I'll let time go by and I'll do those things, but because I let too much time go by, now I'm rushing. Right. And now I'm not doing as great of a job at those things as I could be. And so just a valuable lesson. So again, that book is like almost required reading for me. So that's the 4 agreements. And I won't get into as much detail with each of these other books as that one, but that one's just important. I would say the most impactful book I've ever read was Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And I read that back in 1992 or 93. And it was literally based on a true story. It was based on the story of the author's life. He was a competitive gymnast out of University of California, Berkeley, I believe, and was, training for the Olympics. And he had a restless heart and kind of a wild side to him, and was riding his motorcycle one day and shattered his leg, right? And it's really hard to be a gymnast at a Olympic level with a broken leg. That's not a thing. So he ended up meeting this person that he referred to as Socrates that really changed his life, right? Socrates was almost like a mystic and really helped him see things through a different light, and very empowering, very real, very high energy, high flow, and taught him how to get out of his own way. And there's something just magnificent about the storytelling in that book, in the overall feeling you get while reading it. So I would tell you that that book changed my life more than anything I've ever read. In fact, I just read it again a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And there's a part two and a part three to that book. I read part two, I haven't read part three. Then there's a whole book on Socrates, which I'm looking forward to getting into as well. And that kind of tells his story. Um, so highly, highly recommend that. I read that book immediately after reading a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. Illusions came out in, I think, in the 80s, and Illusions was subtitled Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah, and similar in scope and breadth to Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Is a story of a man who met another guy who was kind of mystical, and kind of broke down the barriers of what we can do as human beings, what we actually have access to. When we change what we look at, we end up changing what we see. We change how we behave. And so he just showed him a different side of life. And I thought Illusions was excellent. And because of the person that recommended Illusions to me, when I got done reading that, she handed me Way of the Peaceful Warrior and said, "Good, now you can read this." And so I was like, "All right, cool." So that doubled down on kind of that same process, that same ideology, that same way of looking at life. And I think those are just so eye-opening, both of them. The next book is also by Dan Millman, who wrote Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It's a book called The Life You Were Born to Live. And we talked a little bit about this the other day, because I remember trying to figure out Jeff's number. It's basically a book on numerology. And what it shares with us is based on our birth date, we are almost predisposed to certain elements of life. And so each number that shows up based on your birth date is reflective of a certain skill set, of a certain attribute, of a certain way of living. And when we operate those things in the positive, great things can happen. But we can also operate from a negative space in that. And oddly enough, less great things happen. So that book is really, really fascinating. And anytime I've ever asked somebody to do their numbers, and I've sent them the description, they're like, "Man, is this just bang on for who I am?" So by way of proper introduction, your birth date, right? So my birth date is 11/18/1970. So you add up the individual integers in your birth date. So 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 8 plus 1 plus 8, 9, 7 plus 0, right? So if you do all of that, that ends up being 28. And so you take the 2 and the 8, you add those together, and then it's 10. And then so you would just do the math. And then if you go and do that math and then Google whatever that number is, again, the first number and then the addition of those two numbers, right? So again, 28, 2 plus 8 equals 10. That's my number, 2810. And then type in life path, you'll actually see what your life path numbers are. So it's like a little cheat. You don't have to read the whole book to get all the information. Obviously, it dives in deeper, but there's a nice little primer for who you are. And so I'm a fan of that book. The next one is a book called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And I remember I remember when I read that in 1999. I was actually in the process of getting divorced. But it took me 1 week to read the first chapter of that book. because like every page had something that blew my mind apart, and I had to sit and process it. And I remember talking to the woman that recommended it. I'm like, I can't even get through this. It's so heavy, it's so thick, so dense. And she said, just read the damn book, Terry. Right? You're looking too much into it. And I'm like, is that possible? I'm not sure. But that book, I think Conversations with God ended up becoming a movie. And Neil Donald Walsh ended up writing 3 different chapters or 3 different books under that sequence. Jeff, have you read that?
Yeah, and I understand exactly what you're saying too, and that the first book is probably the best. And it was like you'd have to reread the page like 6 times, right? I mean, that's how I was taking it in. It was like that. It was like it's not one book. It's hard to explain. I know exactly what you're saying. It was so much information. And then I got into 2 and 3. And I think somewhere in 2 and 3, I actually am getting lost. Like became almost too much, you know. It's well worth it though. Yeah.
Loved it. I absolutely loved it. And that's a book that I'll end up reading again at some point.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting because, books never change, but we do.
We do. Exactly.
Right. So how we interpret something at say 28 versus how we interpret the same thing at 50, it's going to have a little different impact, right? It's going to have a little different ring to it. So that's a book that I will end up rereading at some point. And the title's a little, it could be off-putting to some people, but I think it's just so spot on, right? And it's a fascinating look at our life. In that same vein, there's a book called The Celestine Prophecy. And the Celestine Prophecy offers 9 different insights into the world. And you can actually Google, and I'll put this in the link too, what those insights are. And it really goes out of its way to show the connectedness of us all and how we're intrinsically tied to not only each other, but everything on this planet and everything on this plane. So it's, Celestine, right? Celestial is definitely a little bit spacey, but it's also very fascinating. Celestine Prophecy and Peaceful Warrior have both been made into movies, right? So for those of us who are like, man, I ain't got time to read a damn book, you can watch them, right? Like every movie that was ever made from a book, the book is usually better, right? But if you didn't read the book, then the movie's great, because you don't know no better. So highly recommend that. The last 2 or 3 are really more in the along the lines of business. The first one, of course, is Napoleon Hill's classic Think and Grow Rich. I can't say enough about the important messages of I think it's the 13 different themes that are inside of that book. I have a tendency to listen to the abridged version by Earl Nightingale. He made a record back in the 50s that was basically a condensation of that book. I'll make sure I put the Spotify link in for that. And you can also listen to the whole book by Napoleon Hill on Spotify as well. I like the Earl Nightingale version because Earl Nightingale's got a voice that is so smooth it doesn't make sense. And Napoleon Hill sounds like nails on a chalkboard. It's so squeaky, man. I'm like, dude, people paid you to speak and you sound like that. Come on. Now, I'm not judging a speaker by his voice, but maybe I am. But super valuable information there. There's a book called The Answer, and John Asseroff, who was one of the teachers in the movie The Secret, wrote that with a partner whose name escapes me at the moment. They were partners in a business called One Coach, and in the late 2000s, 2008, 2009, the business didn't take, although it was growing pretty quickly, but they got in a big billionaire versus multimillionaire fight and decided to blow it up because that's how people are, evidently. but the book does a really, really excellent job of combining spirituality and law of attraction and just mental fitness with actual business application.
Mhm.
It's basically two books in one. Asaraf wrote one half and his partner wrote the other half. So it was like just this perfect combination of things that we can do to grow our company, to grow ourselves, and that was really, really enjoyable. I'm gonna check my notes real quick because like I just rattled off most of them without looking at it. Life You Were Born to Live, Illusions. Oh, the last one is The Science of Getting Rich. And that was a book by a gentleman named, hold on, that was a book by a guy named Wallace D. Wattles. And Wallace Wattles' book, The Science of Getting Rich, he actually wrote three books: The Science of Living Well, The Science of Doing Good, and The Science of Getting Rich. He wrote all three of them in 1913, right? And he was kind of an old dude. And they're relatively short and simple books. And again, there's podcasts for them, so I'll drop the links to the podcast too, so you can just listen to it. It's an audio. But they were so profound and so deep. In fact, The Science of Getting Rich was the book that Rhonda Byrne read that led her to create The Secret. So it was very much because of this book, and it basically, the main premise is that the entire universe is thinking stuff, right? And if we put thoughts out, we can attract whatever it is we need to make that happen, right? But it's about being consistent and having those same thoughts over and over and over again. Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks from Abraham Hicks, always talked about the idea that if we could hold a thought for 17 seconds,
Yep.
the thing we're thinking about starts to attract to us, right? But most of us have the attention span that doesn't last 8 seconds, so we can't even hold the thought for 17 whole seconds, right? And that's why they talk about when we first get up and when we're about to fall asleep, we stay focused on what it is we want, because that's how we generate that movement inside the universe to bring us what we're looking for. The challenge is so many of us are like, well, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for this other thing. And so we bounce from thing to thing to thing. And as stuff starts being attracted to us, we switch lanes. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess they don't want me anymore. Right. So it becomes really, really important. That's why mantras are so important. That's why those incantations or those affirmations are so important. Because if we keep repeating the same thing, those things actually begin to happen to us. So that's the like the reading list that I would highly recommend. And again, those that have audio links, I'll make sure that I drop the links in the wrap up sheet. What books would you recommend while we're on the topic? What did I miss?
So there's a book that I've been swearing by since 2014. It's called Essentialism: The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, by Greg McKeown. And this book, I mean, I used it and I really just changed kind of like my whole philosophy and how I build relationships, the type of work that I do, everything, because the book talks about kind of like facing the reality that you can do anything, but you can't do everything, right? You can't be, just every single thing. And you do have to make choices in life. And it's not, even though it's called The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, it's not about like just relentlessly chopping down your list of things to do, but it's very heavily focused on doing the right things in the right way at the right time. And so those are the three questions I always ask myself when I have an opportunity in front of me. Like, is this the right thing to do, right? With my time and talent, do I know how to do it the right way? And most importantly, is it the right time? Because there's been so many things in my life, even starting the business that I have today, I wanted to do it 11 years ago when I was pregnant with my son. His birthday is tomorrow. So it's like super special because I was like all in the moment of this business back then. And it was I knew the right way. It was the right thing, but it was not the right time. And it had nothing to do with the fact that I was about to become a mother. It had everything to do with just the transition our family was going through. And so it just wasn't the right time for it. And what the book taught me is like, once you have those things satisfied, like once you know that it's either the right, if you have all those things aligned, it makes your yes a hell yes. So the book operates in extremes. Like there's no gray. And my personality is kind of like that anyway. So it just suited me because I don't do gray. Like I'm either in or I'm out. That's just how I am. And so this book talks about that, about, if something is not a hell yes for you, like on everything, especially when your money's involved and your time, then the answer is just no, and be okay with that. And it teaches you, there's this whole chapter in the book about developing your no repertoire, because like you can't, depending on who you're talking to, you can't tell everybody no the same way. Some people you can just give a flat no, and sometimes that doesn't work. That's actually to tell somebody no. Like I had to tell somebody no because I've had 2 of my clients offer me jobs, and I had to tell them no, but I had to tell them no in a way that helped them maintain their confidence in me and want to keep working with me anyway, right? And so you develop this no repertoire, and it was just a really powerful book to read at a 14 years ago. I was like in my mid 20s. And so it was just a great thing to learn at a young age. And it just made me more resolute and able to double down more on the things that I wanted. So
I think that's such an important lesson, right? Is if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. I live by that. I think that's so very, very important. So good for you. I love that. I love that a lot. And I like the no repertoire too, because you're right. You can't say no the same way to everybody, because some people get real sensitive about that stuff.
For real.
Get real sensitive. So makes perfect sense to me. Jeff, what's a book you'd recommend now?
So the hell yes, or hell yes or no. I've been using that for years, and I didn't know where it stemmed from. I got it from a seminar at one point, but I use it all the time. So excellent. Mindset stuff. The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, I think, is probably a book that everybody needs to read, and it's success in all areas of your life. And Canfield lays it out. I mean, it's just a well-written book, and just how to be successful in the full picture. From a mindset, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. If you've not read this book, I picked it up. I could not put it down until I finished it. And Viktor Frankl survived concentration camps in World War II. And his mindset was he had more freedom than the guards that had him captive. And it's a 2-part book. So the first part is the actual experience, and the second part is how your mind controls everything. And it's freaking amazing. Andy Andrews has got some great books. And Andy Andrews, he's got like the Traveler's Gift, which is like life experience and the lessons in life. And the Butterfly Effect, which he goes into that whole thing, is really cool. He's just got some short read, great books. Those are ones that jump out to me. And then some of the ones you've listed already. Celestine Prophecy, I was never able to finish that one. It's a great book, but I just couldn't. It's another heavy one.
Yeah, and to me, I think there's kind of an order in some of those books, right? I think if Celestine Prophecy is not, like, if you've never read anything on the spiritual path, that's not the place to start, man. No. There's a depth in that, and like Conversations with God, that you're probably not ready to handle. And that's to some extent why I liked Illusions, because Illusions is such a soft dip into it. And even Way of the Peaceful Warrior is where you're not just fully immersed in just such new age, next level thinking that you almost need like a primer, right? It's like, you can't take statistics, a 400 level statistics course without taking a 100 level, and Conversations with God and Celestine Prophecy are like 300 and 400 level courses. So I totally appreciate that. I mentioned the podcast Moonshots before we got on. And so Moonshots is a cast that I found about a year ago. And it's interesting. I found it because I was reading a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And so I wanted to learn about some of his other works. And so I was Googling podcasts. And what I love about Moonshots, and they're about 150 episodes in, is they take a person, a noteworthy person, and they've done shows on Michelle Obama, they've done shows on Bill, and a separate one on Melinda Gates, they've done shows on Elon Musk, they've done shows on Michael Jordan and Lady Gaga, and they've done authors. Actually, they did a show that I recommended on The Way of the Peaceful Warrior at one point, so like my name's on their podcast. I was like, yay me. But there's all kinds of really cool stuff that they basically take a look at, if it's an author or a famous athlete or whomever, and they take a deep dive by using 5 to 7 clips of the person that they're talking about speaking or doing their thing, and then they debrief between the two of them to kind of pull out the nuggets and the gold. And these guys are from Australia, so they've got a little bit of an accent, and they're super over the top excited about everything. Everything's the greatest thing they've ever heard, and so that puts people have been put off by that a little bit, because if everything's great, then is anything great? I don't know. But I love the energy, and I love the format. And so if you're somebody that wants to listen to and hear from some of the greatest talents or minds in history, this is a great way to do it. And there are times when they'll take a deep dive on a particular person. They did 4 episodes on Ryan Holiday, who's the guy behind the Daily Stoic. And that's a great newsletter that shows up in your inbox every day. And Stoicism as a
No, you know what? I was looking for this one book on Audible, and then the book started playing. As you were talking, I was like, oh, I got to find this one book to share with you guys. And then it said, this is Audible.
That's awesome. I'm like, wait a second, what? That didn't even sound like either one of you. How'd that happen? We got a ventriloquist in here. Can we get some and so they'll do like a deep dive. They did a deep dive on Simon Sinek. They did a deep dive, like 3 or 4 episodes of him. They did trying to remember who else they've done a couple of them. Adam Grant. They did 3 or 4 episodes on Adam Grant. And so it's the episodes are about an hour long, and like I almost wish that I was just sitting with a notepad while I was listening to it, because easily 6 or 7 quotable nuggets in every single episode. And so when I talk about what we're feeding our mind, historically, I was the guy that had the music cranked up to 36 in the car and bumping my way down the road. And over the last few years, I've tried to change that to Drive Time University, right? Where I'm listening to something that's actually going to make me a better person, and not bother everybody with my singing, because if you put that music on, man, I got to sing horribly, but I got to sing. So it's a really good way to kind of look at that as an opportunity to learn. So I'll drop the link for that. And then the last 2, did you find the Audible? Did you?
I did. It was I guess, like, who wrote that book? It's Uncommon by Tony Dungy. I like that book. And there's like different versions of it too. There, like, the general one is called Uncommon, and then he has Uncommon Marriage and the Uncommon Life. And so it's just about like really stepping outside of your boundaries and like pushing yourself. And so he definitely has that coach flair, But I mean, you know, his life was very unique because he lost his child I think he lost his child to suicide actually. And, you know, so he kind of brings a bit of that to the story as well. So he's a great coach and a great author. So yeah.
That's tough, man.
I can't even, I can't even imagine that. So
Tough. I had my boy my daughter was dating for a minute last fall, ended up killing himself about 3 weeks after they broke up. I don't think they were related by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean that was devastating. And then about 2 weeks after that, a friend of mine's 17-year-old son killed himself. And this dude just posted yesterday that it's been 2 months, and he's like, it feels like it's been 2 minutes. He's like, time has ceased to exist or make any sense at all. And I just like it. Every time I see a post from David, it's just like my heart breaks over and over and over again. Just like can't even imagine what that would be like. Devastating. So those are kind of the books and the shows and the things that I actually feed myself. The last couple of things that I'm gonna share, I've got a LinkedIn checklist, right? A 19-step checklist that I put together a while ago. So I'll drop that in here so we can find that, and just so you can go through your own process, right? And make sure that the key elements of what your profile needs to have are there, because that's the reality is websites aren't nearly as important as they once were. People are going to check you out on the socials, and if we're talking business, that's where they're going. So your homepage, your profile page is an important element. So that checklist is pretty useful, and it gives a timeline for how long things take and what you need to do first, and what you can do. It's like a 30-day roadmap to actually get your profile up to snuff. So you're not sitting there going, well, shit, now I got 8 hours of work that I've got to knock out right now. So it's helpful. And then the last piece, years ago, I wrote a series of posts on the Ask, right? Which, that was my version of the 30-second or 60-second commercial. And so I actually dug that out the other day. And so I will share that as well, because I know that there's very good information in that. So I'll share that as well. So those will be kind of the resources that when I wrote resources, I was looking at that I can share with you. As I mentioned on several occasions, having that one-to-one conversation will kind of help customize it to you and what you need. And as I mentioned before we started recording, I really wish I would have done this session next week. But we learn as we go. We're learning out loud together. Whee! So that's what I got.
excellent.
So,
Got lots of stuff to read.
I
said I have lots of stuff to read.
It's yeah, there really is. And it's all super enjoyable stuff, right? And it'll level up your thinking, it'll level up your being, which is to me what it's all about, right? How do we continue to grow? So you mentioned about comfort zones, man. Growth does not happen inside of our comfort zone. That is for sure. Cannot, will not, does not. So
Right.
that's that. What can I do to make any of your weeks better?
When you and I talk, this upcoming call is about you. This next one is about you. Okay. I just want to make sure I was tracking.
I feel like we could do both.
You want to do both? Okay.
I feel like we could do both. So if you want to extend the time a little bit,
yeah.
I'm okay with it.
I can. Perfect.
I've got time for both conversations.
Yeah.
Jeff, I think you know this, but Princess is an instructional designer by trade, right? And ISDs basically take content and make it look like it's training ready. So before we even started this class, I said, my entire goal with doing this is to make an online course, and I'm good with conceiving content and the ideas of content, but I am not as strong of a visual communicator as I could be. And so I said, maybe we could partner together and we could do something where when I go sell this thing online, you can help snazzy it up a bit and make it look like it should look. And we could partner on building this out. And so we're going to have that conversation as part of our discussion.
Cool.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So, yeah, just be ready for full princess. That's what you mean.
That's what I asked for, right?
Be ready.
She's like, yeah, I'm interested in that conversation. I'm like, well, hold up. Let's do it in a few weeks after you've seen some of the stuff.
Like, let's go.
I want you to know what you're getting into, princess. I don't want you to just say yes to say yes, because it might be a hell no. And then
listen, I've had to tell people no. I think it's so healthy for friendships, especially. I get right to the no. I had a friend call me because she needs more foundational skills and like the operations of her business. Like, she's very good at working in it, but like not on it. And I've helped her out a ton. And she called me a couple weeks ago and she was asking me like accounting questions. And I said, I was like, you need to talk to a CPA. Like, I can give you a number. And she says, no, I got somebody who can do my taxes. I need to go through my budget. Do you want to help me? And I said, no, I don't. And I just said it so quickly. And I didn't have to give a whole reason. And I just said, and she's like, oh no, I know you're probably busy. And I said, I just want to be truthful with you. No, I just don't want to spend my time doing that. Like, I am busy, but like if the house was on fire, I'd find time to put it out. You know what I'm saying? So I said, but it's not about that. That's not what I want to do. And I just want to be truthful about that. Right. And she respected it. And I was like, you call me for something else, like, I'll do it. Like, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to help with your budget. I don't
want to do my own budget. What makes
for real. It's like, I just don't. I was like, I just don't. And I said, this is part of you growing as a businesswoman, is you're going to have to do this, or you're going to have to pay to outsource it. And I don't do that as a business. So you can't outsource it to me. And so I can give you the name of somebody who does this and does it very well. And there you go. And so, no, but the integrity of the relationship was still there. So
good for you. Good for you. Yeah. We gotta, like, that's one of my all-time favorite words, right? And as a salesperson, it's my favorite word, right? It's my second favorite answer, right? Because I can deal with yes, and I can deal with no. Anything in between those is relatively useless to me. So I think it's a sign of respect to be able to tell somebody no quickly. All right. I get to know fast.
That's true.
So I appreciate that for sure. Mr. Clatterbaugh, how may I be of service to you, sir?
I'll contemplate that one.
Okay.
He'll text you.
Are we meeting tomorrow at Uptown 4, Terry?
What's that?
Are we meeting tomorrow at Uptown?
No, it's 2 weeks from I think it's 2 weeks from today. I think it's the 15th. Princess, if you'd like to come by, I've got a group of folks that are getting together for a happy hour. That's a group called Club MCC. But you're welcome to come in and say hello and meet some folks if you'd like.
Sure. Which day is this?
This is Tuesday the 15th, and I think we're meeting at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. Hold on, let me look. No thinking, no, just knowing. Club MCC. Yeah, I haven't thought about that much, so let's see when it is. And it's funny because I threw it in my calendar kind of haphazardly yesterday, even though I set the time, a week and a half ago. March 15th at 4:30 p.m. and it's at Uptown Grill.
Okay.
Okay.
Uptown
Yeah.
Grill.
So there's a good group of people, like a bunch of Jeff Clatterbaugh running around.
There you go.
Well, don't scare her away. Princess, I think you would really enjoy the group, actually.
Is Uptown Grill in Birmingham or which one?
It's in Commerce.
Commerce, okay.
It's in Commerce. It's right at Maple, in between Haggerty and M5.
Perfect.
So it's left side of town for sure. It's so funny, that group is, everybody's either far east side or far west side. I think I've got like two people in the middle. And I'm like, well, y'all are gonna have to drive, I guess. I don't know what to tell you, you know. And I try and do stuff on the east side, but I don't like the east side. The east side's fine. It's just far away. But yeah, you're welcome to join that. And if you're watching this video later, Brianna, Paula, as an example, well, Paula's already invited, but Brianna is certainly invited as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Yeah. So it's cool. And it's, you know, it's a good opportunity to go meet some new folks and create some cool collaboration. You know, MCC in that sentence stands for making conscious connections.
Perfect.
So that's what we're all about. So, and it'll be good. This will be the first time we've seen each other in person, and probably we've had a couple of small gatherings over the COVID time, but nothing like we were doing before. So it'll be good to get back on that horse.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about that. So excellent. Anything else?
Good stuff.
All right. Well, I wish you two a phenomenal day and even better week, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
Perfect. You forgot to tell us you forgot your closing line.
Which one? Oh, about I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. That one?
There you go.
Look at you. I love that. Dang it. I should have had that image up. You're right. You are right. How will we know when the meeting's over if I don't say that?
Exactly.
So,
Gotta keep it consistent.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Princess. I appreciate it.
Take care, gentlemen.
All right, guys. See you soon.
Bye.